Okay, so I'm getting smoked in the stock market right now. And to prove it to you, the title of this video has changed drastically in the last week. If I made this video even a month ago, the title would have been How I Got to a $430,000 Net Worth by age 28. But that's changed now. So this video is going to cover how I built my net worth from zero to about $400,000 by age 28. And honestly, after this recording, I don't know exactly where it is. It's a very volatile day. Could be in the high 380s, 390s, could be 410. I don't know. Like, it changes every hour. Okay, so quick update. Apparently the video's already outdated since I recorded it this morning because as of Tuesday, April 8th, we had another crash. So I ran the numbers. My net worth's actually around 380K, down from 430, which is absolutely crazy. And also, that includes me adding an extra 30,000 to it from my work bonus last month. So I've been getting killed. But one thing's certain is that this is a crash now, and it's going to go down in history. I was a little bit torn on making this video because it is a very transparent video, but given what's going on, it just feels like the perfect time. I'm only sharing this for transparency. This is not to brag. I'm making this to show you something about what you can do and what a realistic path of building wealth looks like. I don't know what's going to happen in the near term in the stock market, but I do know what these crashes have done for me in the past. So today I'm going to explain how the last two stock market crashes helped me build my net worth to over 400 G's by my late 20s. And my actions during these crises is a big reason why I could do the things I'm doing now. So here we are. This $400,000 net worth is a combination of tax advantage accounts, individual taxable brokerage accounts, checking accounts, and a small amount of crypto. If I was new to investing, I'd for sure be freaking out right about now. I mean, this was me in 2020 and in 2022. But I've been through these exact emotions a couple of times now, and this has enabled me to be much calmer right now. And maybe even part of me is excited given how these last two crashes panned out for me and enabled me to just scoop up a bunch of shares at low prices. I'm seeing the same exact behavior that we saw last time. Everyone get out, it's over, everything's done. People tend to buy when it was high and then sell when it's lower, which, believe it or not, is not what we should be doing. People just tend to overreact to things. It's human nature. Building this portfolio has allowed me so many things in my life: to quit my job, to travel the world, to deploy the money to get passive income, and it give me the opportunity to make entrepreneurship work. So I'm going to talk about each step of the way to get to this point, my university, my career, all investment vehicles I used at each step, and how a few crises in the stock market just helped me blast off to the next level. I also want to discuss some mistakes I made and future goals given the current climate. So I want to show you what your finances could look like if you roughly follow this strategy or steps. Obviously, there's no guarantees, but I'm just going to provide my example. As always, this is not financial advice. This is just a story on how I built my net worth. And I talk about this a lot in my videos, but I just want to show how normal people can do this. Like, I'm just a guy from Wisconsin. I went to university, got a 9-to-5 job, lived frugally, and invested. Very normal path. I don't believe I'm extraordinarily talented or smart, and nothing super crazy happened in my life. But I did work hard. I'd say there were three main reasons why this worked if you had to summarize it in one sentence. I had a high income, I lived very cheaply in my 20s, and I invested the whole time, especially during downturns. So before getting into it, let me know how much money you've lost on paper during this crash. For me, it's in excess of 40 to 50,000 when you add it all up so far. So it's definitely not a good time, and we can suffer together below, so let me know. So first, I want to talk about why should we be doing this? Why should we care about our financial situation? And here's why. Because I've said this before too, but it's very sad for me when I see people in their early 20s, early 30s saying like, oh, I got time, I don't need to worry about investing. I'd shake my head every time because you're washing away your biggest asset in investing, and that's time, and it could be costing you over your life. I took advantage of this from an early age. I started investing at age 22, and it's provided me with many things. Let me talk about a few of them. Number one, a safety cushion. If stuff goes wrong, I can comfortably pay for it. I can afford that surprise car fix, that medical bill, or more. And it just helps me stress less and sleep well at night, knowing I can cover unexpected things that come up, which do happen all the time. This also provides me with an income. My money is working for me. I have a lot of it in dividend ETFs like SCHD to give me income during uncertain times. It's an income producing asset that's working for me around the clock, even when I'm not working. And I make about $21 a day, every single day, and an average of over $600 a month, no matter what I'm doing that month. And that number is continually growing. And then this is the next part, and this is probably my favorite part of building a high net worth, is that I don't think of money as like, what can I buy with this? I think of each dollar as a unit of freedom to buy my time and freedom back. If you have money, you just have more options with what to do with your life. And more importantly, you have freedom and you can make decisions and be pickier with your opportunities. With 400 grand, like obviously I can't retire on that if I want to live in America, but here's what I can do. At this level, if you don't like your job, you can leave. If you want to go travel, no worries, you can do it. I got to a spot at age 28 where I wanted to travel with my girlfriend and pursue entrepreneurship, so I did it. And if I wasn't intentional with my money in my 20s, I would not have had that option and would likely be stuck in a less than ideal situation right now. I intentionally keep my overhead, very low in my life. I don't have a mortgage, I don't have any debts, I don't have long-term rent. And it's not that I'm against these things, it's just my situation in life, this doesn't fit me yet. Those will all come at a later time. And 400,000 isn't the end game, but it's a pretty damn good start that puts me near the top percentile for my age group. So I've reached what is called coast fire, which just means that I don't need to contribute any more money into my portfolio and I'll be able to retire as a multimillionaire, assuming that the market at least does okay and continues to generate a 7 to 10% return. And of course, no big surprises come up. But I'm reinvesting $600 a month into my portfolio through dividends. And it's just going to continue to grow itself into millions of dollars by my 60s if I literally just break even for the rest of my life, which isn't my goal, but that's kind of what's happening. My work in my 20s really set me up for life, assuming I don't squander this opportunity or do something crazy or idiotic. I believe you can do this. I can't guarantee, the future or the same results, but I'm a believer in technology and innovation in both the American and international stock markets, and that's where I'm investing in. You got to decide what makes sense for you. So just one note, I do want to talk about hard work versus luck in investing and in life, because most accomplishments in our lives are some combination of skills and luck. Like, you'd be foolish to deny that luck is always a factor in our lives. And I was lucky that these downturns happen and lucky that they bounce back. And I always think back to this story of late legendary billionaire investor Charlie Munger. He said when he was a kid, he was playing in his yard with his friend, and a rabid dog got loose and ended up lunging at him and his friend. It ended up attacking his friend, who eventually died right after due to the injuries and infections. It was basically pure luck that the dog chose to attack his friend and not him, and that allowed him to live and become successful and become a billionaire. And that was nothing of his own. That was just pure luck. I've had skills and luck work in my favor in many ways. The skills being, I've always worked hard. I took advantage of the opportunities given to me. I kept learning. I always wanted to improve my knowledge, my communication skills, and I believe life is a process of continual improvement. I went from minimum wage jobs to smaller paying internships, then bigger paying internships, then my salary for $70K, then my first full-time job, and then I ended up around $140, $150K when I left. And that's where hard work played a role, because I was continuously making myself more valuable. And the next huge part was that I was a disciplined investor. I didn't chase get-rich-quick schemes, and I invested monthly consistently. That's also not luck. Now, the part where I am very, very lucky is, number one, the country I was born in. I believe the USA is the easiest country to get wealthy in my opinion. The stock markets continued to go up during my tenure of investing. I've had a favorable job market when I entered it. I'm healthy, I have lots of energy, and as well as a great support network and supportive family that I've had in my life at many key steps in the journey. So that's all stuff that worked heavily in my favor. And we can't deny the role that luck plays in our lives, but the goal is not to be trapped and reliant on it at the same time, because there are still ways out of situations that aren't ideal. And if you're watching this, you're from another country or you're from a non-supportive family, there's no way to cut it. It's going to be a tougher journey than the one I experienced, and I'm aware of that. But although it's harder, it's not impossible, because my path is something that can be followed. I went to school, I worked hard to get a job, and then I just invested with a lot of discipline, and I continually learned. And now that, I believe, is a path that most people can follow. Here's my story. So attending university is a huge financial decision. So we're going to start here. My goal was really to make college as cheap as possible, because this will affect your net worth. And for those in that phase of their lives, you need to be thinking about this, because college is an investment, and you need to think about what's the cost versus what can you estimate that you'll make afterwards. You might not even need college, and you should not be getting a bad ROI degree. But depending on you and your situation, it could be a good decision, and I'd say it was a good decision for me. So if you do decide to go, you need to ask yourself, how can you lower the cost of it and increase your chance at a good job afterwards? So here's how I did that. Let's start with high school. I know what you're thinking. Why learn? What the hell did high school? How does that affect my net worth? Well, here's how. I did work some jobs, like minimum wage jobs in school, but that was just to keep the lights on. That wasn't really impactful. What did affect my cost was I loaded up on AP classes in high school, which gave me college credits. Like I was a turbo try-hard nerd in high school, and I own up to that. I went all out loading up on the most difficult classes I could for college credits. This is AP Comp Sci, this is AP Chemistry, Macro, Microeconomics, and more. And due to this, I basically attended college starting as a sophomore in 2015. I had 2 full-time student years, and then I was a part-time student my entire time as an upperclassman, and I graduated college in 3 years with a computer science degree in 2018. I went to a public in-state school, shout out to UW-Madison, with much lower tuition than a private or out-of-state school. And due to my test scores and grades, like I said, I took everything seriously back then. I did have some scholarship options, and there were a few good schools who had scholarship guarantees to those with my test scores and grades. And I considered that, but I loved Wisconsin too much. So my total tuition for the 3 years was around $30,000. So this is not very expensive, relatively speaking, due to my AP classes and just being a part-time student. I always had 1 or 2 jobs at a given time, in addition to starting a failed business. But I worked for Jimmy John's my freshman year. Then I worked for a small family company another year after that. And these are both part-time. We're talking $12 to $15 an hour. And then later in university, I got a higher paying job as a software development intern for a bigger company at $22 an hour. This allowed me to stay on top of my living expenses with money coming in. And then later in college, I was making solid money to cover everything. And I was working very hard. My grades really suffered towards the end of university because I was so busy with everything else I was doing. And to be honest, I just wasn't feeling any interest in my college classes anymore because I thought the job was much more interesting. I prioritized experience over grades, and I believe this helped me. So you should really try to get work experience in university to stand out from the crowd and command a higher salary when you start. So the next part I'm not going to hide from, and I'm sure people are going to jump at this to discredit every accomplishment that I have for my entire life. But I had great parents who helped me with the remaining cost of tuition that I couldn't cover myself. I simply followed the above steps to make it as easy as possible on them. Again, it was AP classes, it was internships. If they weren't paying for some of it, I would have likely explored some of my cheaper options for university. But no matter what way we sliced it, I didn't want to come out of college with much, if any, debt. In my previous videos, I've gotten a lot of hate for some reason when family helps you, which I've always found interesting because in my mind, we should make it a goal to provide for our future family. And it's my goal to provide for my family in the future the way that my parents provided for me. So I'm sure I'm going to get some hate for that, and that's fine, but you don't magically go from 0 to a 400K net worth because of a little bit of tuition help. So at the end of my university tenure, I graduated with no debt, essentially around a $0 net worth, and this was huge, as student debt is a big burden, and I'm not denying that this is an extremely advantaged position to begin my software career. So this takes me to my early career. I took a job at $75,000 per year as an entry-level software engineer that was offered to me after my internship, and I continued living with my college roommates. This is late 2018 to early 2020. This was when I dove into the world of investing at age 22. I read books. I read The Intelligent Investor and Unshakable. I got into YouTube videos, watched people like Graham Stephan, studied strategies of guys like Warren Buffett. And from there, I began to open my accounts. I took advantage of the tax-advantaged accounts and company benefits as I was starting my company. In the United States, taxes can eat away at your gains. So any strategy you can use to legally, and an emphasis on that, legally pay less taxes is great. The government offers you these tax-advantaged accounts, so I fully used them. First step was I opened a Roth IRA and threw in a few hundred a month to start. And this is nice because the growth in this account is tax-free. So I loaded up as much as I could into this every year. And this is huge because the compounding effect for 40 plus years is massive when you don't have to pay taxes on the other side of it. I also opted into the company pension, which I would become vested in after 3 years of working there. I opened a company 401k, which had a match of up to 5%. And mainly in these accounts, I invested in very stable ETFs and mutual funds. I'm talking SPY, SEHD, VYM, VIG, VTT, SX, and those kind of things. A 401k is nice because you don't have to pay taxes on the income going into it. Plus, I got a free match. So large amounts of money can compound over time, then you just pay taxes later. I would put in as much as I could into my investments at this time, which was a few thousand a month. And my rent was like $500 a month. I still lived with my roommates. I drove a really shit car. I drank cheap beer. I had a cheap lifestyle. Our apartment had a rat problem. There were homeless guys sleeping on our porch occasionally. Like, it wasn't great. My lifestyle was like a guy making minimum wage, even though I was making good money now. And that's the key. I also opened a taxable brokerage account to be able to play around with investing in individual stocks. So over this year and a half, the market went up and my net worth went from around 0 to 50K right before COVID. And I was on top of the world because at 23, this is a great position to be in. And I held a little bit of crypto as well, but never more than a few thousand. I got a promotion at work, and this was a little bit of a pay increase during this time as well. And these are good times. I was making money, and stocks only go up, right? Nope. Early 2020, the virus, we all know, hit the world. And most people lost about 30% of their net worth in a few weeks. And this was scary because I lost a 5-figure amount on paper, and I didn't know what to think. Losing 15,000 in a few days, or I guess a few weeks, was scary. And this is very similar to what's happening today, an aggressive crash in a short time period. I'm very thankful that I had good role models and investors in my life screaming at me what to do. But things will bounce back. Now is the time to be buying, is what they were telling me. So I doubled down on this. I moved back in with my parents during this time to save money. Every morning, my dad and I would wake up, we'd check the markets, then we'd go grind at our remote jobs. Then we'd talk about what opportunities are out there. And our house felt like Wall Street for a little bit. It was kind of fun in a weird way. During this time, I doubled down on my investing. I sold stuff on eBay to get more into the markets, took it to an extreme level. I was maxing out my paycheck into the markets as much as I could. I was constantly reading quotes from famous investors like, buy when there's blood in the streets, be greedy when others are fearful. And everyone was panicking, and I just did the opposite of what everyone else was doing. And it was a rough month with lots of loss and uncertainty. But I had a few great buys during this time. I bought the Qs at 185, Blackstone at 36, VIG, low price, 401k mutual funds, much lower price. It was a crazy fire sale of everything. And my biggest buys were a mix of individual and ETFs. And again, I'm not sure I'd go with individual companies anymore, but I still hold a lot just due to my buying in this time period. And it's just because it's kind of fun too. So it didn't take very long, and my net worth basically exploded as the market bounced back in this V-shaped recovery. And I went from about a $35,000 net worth during like the worst part of COVID to $100,000 by the end of the year in 2020 as stocks came back aggressively. Then eventually, this all went all the way to 200K, which was when there was a local peak in the market in October of 2021. So looking back at this, COVID was a huge opportunity for me to buy a bunch of stocks at low prices. The S&P was super low, the Dow, the NASDAQ. This crash was actually a good thing, and controlling my emotions during this made me tens or even hundreds of thousands of dollars. In terms of my career, there's nothing else to do during this time of COVID, so I kept working very hard. Our team was becoming very important since we wrote code for the websites at the company that I was working at, moved to more of an online sales business model. And eventually I got promoted to a coveted senior engineer position, and this was the first time I ever cracked 6 figures of income in a year. And I still lived with my parents. You see the point here. The more I made, the more I kept my lifestyle the same, and this allowed me to continue to invest thousands of dollars per month with no big debt, no expensive lifestyle. That year I also bought a little bit better of a car, about $5,000, since my old one was really having a rough time in the Wisconsin winter. So rest in peace to my 2003 Saab. You will be missed. I took more advantage of the tax advantage accounts at this rate, and I was able to max out my 401k and my Roth IRA each year while living at home. I did some extra side hustle work of reselling NFL and NBA cards on eBay and at trade shows, and this added an extra few thousand of profit per year, and this was just something I enjoyed doing. Despite this, I thought I was becoming comfortable and stagnant and underpaid in my current job when I was looking at the job market at the time in 2021. Software engineer was booming at this time, and I knew I could get a better salary, and I was getting tired of living with my parents too. So I went on a job hunt. I switched jobs to a higher paying one, and by switching I got about a 25 to 30% raise, just showing that switching jobs every few years can get you raises faster. And I even took a lower ranking engineer for this type of a raise, which was crazy. Now through this I was able to scale my investments to about $4,000 a month, and I was in mostly safer things at this time, less individual stocks, although I still enjoyed playing that game too. This was a lot of work to get to this point, and I'm proud of myself for this time period because the math was saying that I was really in a winning position at this time. I opened my HSA, which I wish I did sooner because it's the only account with a triple tax benefit when used for medical expenses, which we all have. So look into that if it makes sense for you as well. I moved to a city, which elevated my cost of living a little bit, but I had a big cushion and it was well within my means at my new salary, so I was fine. I was making about 130K plus depending on bonuses, and this allowed me to max out nearly everything. 401k, putting as much as I could into a Roth, although I was getting close to that contribution limit at this point, And everything left over just went into a taxable brokerage account, which was easily becoming my biggest account at this point. Then, just like usual, the markets did not go up forever. And this wasn't really an aggressive crash, but a slow one due to the Ukraine war and inflation. So in 2022, the S&P dropped into bear market territory over a fairly long period of time. And this cost me about $30,000 plus. I remember going from over 200K to, I believe, 170K, 180K. Thankfully, this time, just like last time, I had the high income to weather the storm. Again, I was able to get massive deals here. One of my funnier wins was I actually interviewed at Palantir in 2021, and I completely bombed the interview, but I thought their software was really cool. So I got into Palantir around $6 a share, and look at it now. That's pretty lucky, and it was kind of a gamble too. But I also stuck with my dividend ETFs and some growth mixed in. A few big players like e-commerce giants from around the world I was investing in. I got more into my dividends because it was becoming bigger and more stable, and SCHD became my biggest ETF dividend holding. Eventually, per usual, it bounced back again. I quickly got back to 200 Gs, then I brushed past the 250K, 300K, 350K as the market continued just going up every year, 20% increase. So again, this crash helped me. I controlled my emotions and took a long-term view, and it rewarded me handsomely. So now let's talk about the 2023 to 2024 time period. And this was probably one of the most hard-working times of my life so far. So I got promoted again that year to a third-level software engineer, and I was able to save and invest even more. But I kind of lost myself in the work here. Like, this is where I was starting to realize extra money and just numbers going up on a screen isn't bringing me in any more happiness. I mean, I got money for more than what I need right now, and I'm kind of just feeling the burnout of the corporate grind. I really had my investment game at a high level. I was seeing quick net worth increases, as well as great years for the S&P, but something was really missing in my life. And this was when I really started to think about starting a YouTube channel and getting into entrepreneurship. The problem was I didn't have much time, and I had some destructive thoughts in the back of my mind saying like, well, what am I going to do if I leave? Like, what? I don't know how to start a business. I've never succeeded in that. How am I going to do this? And my only other income was dividends at the time. So in January of 2024, I made the decision that I would quit my job later in the year to be with my girlfriend long term and chase my dreams of entrepreneurship. My plan included the following: moving back in with my parents again, and this was at 27 years old. So as you can imagine, I was making very good money, more than I ever have at over 140K at this point. And I was living with my parents with no other major bills. Again, this really freed up my investing. I was able to get my investments to $5,000 plus per month. And although I wasn't expecting much from it at the time, I started my YouTube channel in August of 2024 with pretty low expectations. But it was a nice creative outlet, and I was talking about stuff I wanted to. I enjoyed COD, I enjoyed finance, nostalgia, life topics. It was the perfect time looking back, given the beginning of the resurgence of COD commentaries. So, 2024 was really, I'd say, the pinnacle of my hard work. Like, I grinded my face off. I worked as a senior engineer during the day, then I used the money to invest, and I'd come home after being tired and make YouTube videos after work and on weekends. It was a grind, but it was worth it, and it was starting to pay off. My channel got monetized, and I started to bring in about $500 a month while I was still working. So now I had two income streams, and it was dividends and YouTube AdSense. I got to 10K subs before even leaving my job, and I also got to $500 to $600 a month in dividends before leaving. So I had over $1,000 plus in side income outside of my job, which is more than enough for me to travel and live in cheaper countries. And any other deficit I ran could be covered by my portfolio. So I picked a point to leave once I got vested in some company benefits. Then I told my boss that I'd be leaving to just do some traveling. I left on some good terms and honestly have nothing bad to say about working for them. I just wanted something different in my life at the time. So getting much closer to present day now, traveling is something I always wanted to do. I always wanted to start a business and of course, take the next steps in my relationship. So after quitting, I traveled to Colombia, lived there for a few months, grinded YouTube more, and now I have a trip to Portugal planned in the coming months. And I'm not investing anywhere near as much as I used to, and I'm working on increasing my income. I'm in the 2 to 3K a month range at the moment, and I'm investing about $1,000 a month in markets, and I'm investing about $1,000 a month into the markets between dividends and my cash pile. And I'm going slightly negative most months, but I'm learning about entrepreneurship, and it's a work in progress. I'm hoping to be able to sustain my lifestyle wherever I am in the world by just growing my income streams and my net worth. Like, the beauty of compounding is still rewarding me, even though my income's not as high as it used to be. So now let's talk about the crash right now. Like, First of all, we've had a lot of years of great gains in the markets, so we were kind of due for something, and the tariffs war just kind of took it over the edge. Now, the tariffs are very controversial, but I've learned that people also overreact to everything. Like, nobody would have sold as aggressively as they did in 2020 had they known the outcome that it was just going to come back in a couple months. In fact, you might not have even sold anything in the first place, because even if you invested in February of 2020 at the worst possible time, you'd be happy right now 5 years later after a few months of suffering. Because all it takes for this instance right now is like one good week or one good month of trade deals for the market to have some heavy green days, and or just one decision where the tariffs get paused. That could literally reverse a lot of this. So this could be the big reset the market needed. Again, I don't know what's going to happen, but what I do know is that the last two crashes before this got me into the financial situation I'm in today. So I'm going to, feel it out and see what happens. So let me just briefly summarize some of the mistakes I made, and I'm probably going to make a separate video for this, but I'd say number one, being smarter with my cash. Like, I just would kind of leave stuff in a checking account, not really earning a yield on anything. You can be smarter with putting your cash in better accounts. I still gambled on some risky stocks, and I lost a fair bit of money doing that a couple times, so I put most of my money towards safe stuff now. I also regret not opening an HSA sooner because there's so many tax benefits there, and you already know you're going to have health expenses. So I could have easily done this sooner, but now I'm fully prepared for any medical emergency, and it's basically like paying no taxes on income that you're just going to spend anyways. So I highly recommend looking into that. Another mistake I made is not starting sooner. Like, when I first started working, I wish I even put $50, $100 a month into the markets, and I could have a lot of extra income right now. And I'd say the final thing, the mistake I made, is just assuming that money is going to bring you happiness, because it's not going to. The people in your life, the projects you're working on is what truly brings you fulfillment. So these are all things you should consider for your situation. Let me know kind of what mistakes you've made as well. But the goal for the future is to just figure out this entrepreneurship thing. I just want to break even and then eventually get to a point where I'm investing a lot again. For my lifetime, it would be nice to have a nice paid off house, a few million working for me in the markets, giving me nice dividends and enough income to support myself and a few kids, giving them the life and education they deserve. That's my long-term goal. If you want to learn more about the basics of investing, I made a nice video on this last year, and I'll link that in the description for those getting started. But that's the end of the video. I know it was a long one, but there's a lot to talk about here. If I can do this, you can too. Just let me know what you think, if your journey is similar, and good luck out there, gentlemen.